to just warm your throat up the last time we talked. So,
Well, I'm brother that came out of the city of Compton, Willowbrook area, Watts area. So that's all within miles of each other. Um, I had parents that were very active in the community. In fact, the first Black Pop Warner football teams were set up by my parents because we went from Willowbrook to Baldwin Hills, and because I didn't live in the area, they wouldn't let me play. And so my mother and them set up the first Black Pop Warner football teams. So not only could I play, but all the kids in my area could play. And we were successful in that. And though that program was adopted by other cities, it was adopted by the Los Angeles County Sheriff Department, and Pop Warner football was going on everywhere, even though law enforcement called it the Sheriff Athletic League. But so they were those type of people. My mother was involved with politics. She was a field deputy for Supervisor Kenneth Hahn. Basically, she did her job so well that the citizens put her in the Walk of Fame down at Ted Watkins Park. Used to be Will Rogers Park. They cemented them in the ground like you do up here in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And so I come from people who were Black nationalists. My grandfather and Marcus Garvey were like best friends. People thought they were brothers. My father's older brother was involved in the civil rights movement. He was the pastor of First AME Church before there was Chip Murray and Bishop Brookins and some of them. So, I grew up with people like James Baldwin, Malcolm X coming to the house. So I was just born into this. So with the parents that I had, my father being a businessman who all of the men knew, and my mother being a community activist, I think I just walked in the door by forfeit because I didn't know no other way but to service people and help people. So, and I followed in the ministry after, I got not only was my father, Alvier Shaw, older brother, first AME, my mother's granduncle was one of the founding fathers of the Church of God in Christ in Texas, Bishop Chester Nelson. So, I get it honestly. So, and so the serving is just in my blood.
wow. You said something interesting. Honesty. Come on, go a little bit deeper on that. What do you mean by that? How you get it honestly?
Well, it just means that sometimes you're on a path, no matter what you do to undermine it or to run from the calling, you end up there. So when you get it honestly, it means that you got it because so many other people laid the groundwork for you that you couldn't help but walk that path, And in fact, it was so laid that I had gotten caught up. Me and my friends were all good kids, but we weren't afraid of the gang members. We weren't afraid of none of that. And we were about to do a home invasion. And we actually had entered the house and everything. And I remember for some reason I was supposed to give the order. And we were defending a friend of mine, and I couldn't give the order. It was almost like I was stuck. I couldn't give the order. Well, we all lived through that. The other people lived through that. 2 weeks later, my parents took me out to eat, and they were telling me how proud they was that I was able to avoid all of the pitfalls that my community brought forth. And I navigated it through them. They didn't know how close I had come to throwing my life away. And I remember at that time saying, if I got these kind of parents and I almost threw my life away, what about the kids that didn't have my type of parents? And so it became very real to me how in one moment you can throw away your entire life. So I spent the rest of my life helping kids, trying to make sure that they took the right steps in life and they did the right things in life from a survival point of view. We never We always tell them to be good because of God told us, because of our religion, because the law said. We never taught kids that you want to be an honest person, a worthy person, worthy of trust, because that's who you want to be. It ain't because of these outside factors. It's because that's who you want to be. And so that's the message that I give to young people.
Yeah, no, I track it 100%. Because I know for me personally, it's one of those things where I say it like sometimes you choose things, sometimes things choose you. And it's one of those things where when I was out there in Compton, because I got relatives out there in Compton and in Inglewood and other areas, but it's just like my cousin that said that to me. I was like, how profound, because you're right. Like no matter how hard I try to move away from the public spotlight, here I am again. It's just like, what do you do? Like for you, tell me your specific, there was a moment though, even though you were on this path and you saw it potentially being thrown away. What was that trigger that caused you to really get back on track? Because this is key. I know, as an example for me, I was just coming off the road. I was working with Kia at that point in time, and this is when the riots was just coming back in 2020, and I taught this concept called the half-second step back. Just that little pause that we need to really create that space so that we can use some discernment. I mean, I don't want to be too cerebral with it. My vocabulary, unfortunately, I'm just trying to be real with it to get people to understand that there's got to be a trigger moment. And it sounds like you had that exact same thing.
Well, I had that trigger moment, and then I had other moments after that. How I got on my life purpose was the fact that my youngest son was diagnosed with dyslexia. And they told me that there was no cure. I'm a young parent, my early 20s. My first child was born when I was 21. My twins came when I was about 23. And they telling me that my son has a disease that is incurable. Fortunately for me, I had a friend that told me about a place that could help him. And I said, at first I didn't send him to the place, but then they came to me and they said, we want to send your son to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And I said, well, why is that? He said, we want them to help him with his self-esteem. I said, I'm his father. That's my job. And I took him to the place that my friend recommended. And over time, they handled him. And I remember when he came home, he said, Dad, I don't think I got it no more. And I was like, why? He said, because I know all my numbers and letters now. And he was showing them and telling me and stuff like that. And basically, they had him do his numbers and letters over and over and over in clay. And to the point, something popped. And all of a sudden he got it. He knew what was going on. His problem is that I worked for the sheriff department. His mother was a dental assistant. So we weren't broke. And my ex-wife was a Catholic. So, he grew, we had gotten housekeepers and stuff, because when they would come in from school and stuff, the housekeeper would keep them. She was speaking Spanish. He got two languages mixed up, and the only one who could really interpret him was his twin sister. And so she knew what he was saying. But being a kid that grew up in the streets, being a person who became a Los Angeles County Sheriff deputy, the one thing I asked was questions. And I said, how many kids are being diagnosed with something as being incurable simply because they don't know how to cure it? Because here my son, it wasn't somebody I heard about. This was my son. And here he was beaming with confidence and feeling good about himself and all of that, simply because they were able to teach him how to do something that the system said that he could not do. So once that happened, that same friend brought me to CCHR, and I learned what was going on behind the scenes. And being born basically a Black nationalist because my grandfather, Marcus Garvey, was like best friends. And people thought they were brothers. And so that's why I have the name Frederick Douglass. My father was named Frederick Douglass. Marcus Garvey was the name of my grandfather's oldest child. And so we had these names and it put me on a track. But I always knew something was wrong with this system. And when I saw CCHR and I saw all of the displays and I saw the information, I said, this is the group that I need to work with so I can bring truth to my community.
Perfect. And how has that been received so far since you've made that decision?
Well, I'm one of those people who, when I get on a path, I do it because I do it. I don't do it for the agreement and the pleasure and the approval of other people. If I know it is right, I'm one of them individuals who can stand on my own and I can stand against everybody. I can be in a meeting and I'll choose to be quiet or I'll choose to take everybody on in the room. I'm just one of those people. So I call it a blessing. I call it a gift from God, but I'm able to stand on the platform of truth. And therefore, I can present it in a way. To give you an example, I was just in New Orleans and CCHR have these traveling exhibits and with all of the information that you can find in our headquarters museum, we have the Psychiatry and Industry of Death Museum. But I got to speak in New Orleans twice at Dillard University. I got to speak on one of their podcasts. I'm invited to come back by Dillard at Loyola University to speak in October at a major event with all the community leaders and things like that. That is only because of the conviction when I talk about the subject. And when I ask them, why have you been so nice and helpful? They say, because when people have the certainty that you have, and you're willing to take on everybody, because I tell people, like on your broadcast, if there's a psychiatrist that want to take me on, we can do this. Because I've been debated people from Morehouse University to UC Irvine to Harvard professors, and I got the same record as Mayweather. So I'm not afraid to take them on. I've debated them in South Africa, and they won't even debate me on TV since I think 2011 or 12. They won't even debate me on TV. They don't want to debate me on the radio because they've never been able to beat me because our information is so solid that they can't stand up against the scrutiny that I bring on them.
Got it. So I appreciate you saying it because again, this is all a new world to me when I first met you. So I'm super excited to be really getting some clarity on some things because on the other side of the coin that I come from, you said something earlier as far as like when the kid just getting the literacy down, it shifts the whole energy and the paradigm of how they think. Was that accurate?
Absolutely. Let me tell you something. There's evidence that if you put a kid in a rigorous study program, if you put the kids in a rigorous study program will alleviate 70% of the ADHD and those type of things. Even changing the diet of an individual will do the same thing. So evidently, it's a lot more easy to fix these things than we believe. And I can give you an example. There was a kid who mother was a crack addict, but she was a deaf mute. And they would do their business arrangements near the school her son went to. And then how cruel kids can be. Well, the kid would always fight the kids that was teasing him, and then the school would punish him, and he had labels of being violent and all that, and he hated all authority. One day, me and him, I shut the door, lock it. Me and him are in there, we're discussing and we're talking. We come out of the room, he's crying, I'm crying. What it came down to was that every time he fought, the school punished him, but the kids were teasing him about his mother doing this and his mother doing that and so forth. And I simply told him, I want to apologize to you that none of the adults in your environment, including the therapist, did not understand all you were doing was defending your mother. And then he went into another whole thing of crying and grief. But when he came out of it, he was a different person. Somebody had simply acknowledged what he saw as his problem. The problem with all of these psychiatric therapies, they tell you what's wrong with you. They never find out what you think is what's wrong with you. And so, and we've been able to change kids' lives. We had a kid that was about 6'2", 235, 230. Big kid, had a scowl on his face, very intimidating. I walk in, as big as I am, I'm 6'6" at the time, 240. And he said, "You want a box?" And I looked at it, and I really understood how he could be intimidating to people who didn't have my background. You know, I've been a sheriff deputy. I grew up in the streets. I was a martial artist. So all of that, his look means nothing to me. And I took him out on the basketball court and found out he had good quickness, good strength. I took him up to the local high school, and I took him to the football coach. Football coach had him do a couple of little things. Said, "Bring him back to me tomorrow. Don't take him to the administration. Bring him to me." I took him back up there. That kid ended up graduating from that high school, played 4 years at USC with Reggie Bush and them. I think they won a national title, ended up on the Philadelphia Eagles for at least 3 years. And this is a kid, when he came to our group home, because he was big, because he was black, because he was intimidating, they recommended go to continuation school and be put on psychiatric drugs. So you'd have wiped out his future and all of his possibility because people were scared of him. And I can tell you this, in the whole time he was in my group home, he didn't have one fight. I don't think anybody wanted to fight him. And he wasn't a bully. He didn't have one fight. He got rolled up a lot of times because he was late coming home, like he was after school. Well, one day, one of the kids told me, all he do, the reason he's late, he walk his girlfriend home. And then he come. Well, that's what I would have did at his age. So why would I punish him? So I'd write him up and all of that. And then at the end of this program, I gave him every one of those write-ups. I had never turned in one. Because if he's doing the right thing, and that was what I taught. I was taught, walk your girlfriend home, make sure they get there safe. Walk your sisters home. If your mother's walking down the street, you go walk with her, you know, and stuff like that. That was the way I was raised, you know, by a man. So, you know, and so when we see these things, we are far too willing to judge these kids, give them psychiatric drugs, electric shock, punish them for things that are normal. Yeah, they're getting on our nerves. But I'm going to say this, because I know I can talk. So, you know, I said 5 more minutes ago. One of the greatest leaders that this country has ever known, Dr. Martin Luther King, as a kid, would have been on psychiatric drugs. When I studied Dr. King, I found out that he had tried to commit suicide twice, and he had hit his brother in the head with a skillet for upsetting their sister. So therefore, that behavior would have had you on psychiatric drugs in this time, but they let him grow up. And then he becomes one of the great orators of our time and one of the great leaders of all times in this country. So we have to start helping kids get through whatever the problem is and not be so quick to give them psychiatric drugs.
Okay. So let's I want to talk about my background a little bit because it ties into what you're saying here. Like I was taught like how to be a journalist in the Marine Corps. So I did basic broadcasting, basic journalism, writing, and all of this stuff, and I had no clue. This is how like naive I was. I didn't even have any clue like how literate I was. You follow me? So I come into a different world where there is contention between like having literacy and not having literacy. And what you're saying, I see and I view as being the effect. The cause is really how they're groomed and developed young. So what I do in order to really lessen the blow of media, since I understand media, like I used to feed these guys all the news, like, yeah, they might tell the news, but I was the guy kind of passing it out. And I did it in an ethical manner for the record. So what I'm asking is that if people were to just focus in on like getting literate, like period, like they just worked, like it's a difference between like a knowing problem and a doing problem. If people don't even know that that's the problem, how do we really raise the awareness from that viewpoint so that they can become more educated?
Well, the Bible says, in all thy getting, get understanding. You can't get understanding unless you know something, unless you study something. So, if we look at John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Word was with God. Those words are telling us that the Spirit of God is wrapped up in words. So all of our understanding of things come in learning the meanings of words, which is what education is. And it's not learning how to recite the words. It's learning what the words mean so that you can apply the word in your everyday communication. So what we do in our school systems, especially in the inner city, you walk into the schools and there's one dictionary in a whole classroom. The emphasis is on sounding out the words and all of that and not knowing what the words mean. And so we have a whole educational system that has failed us, which contributes to what they call mental illness, because they use that to put in special education and all of those type of programs that the schools get more money for, the parents can get more money for. All of these things are money driven. But if we truly educated, people like you and I put a school system in, and we made sure that the kids knew the meanings of words and knew how to do things. Let me tell you, we cut crime just in that alone. Why is it that when Malcolm X went into prison, he was a pimp, dope dealer, crook, robber, but when he started learning the meanings of words, he comes out and he becomes a orator and thing. Tookie Williams, the leader of the Crips, had started looking up words in the dictionary. And the same thing Malcolm had done everywhere. And then he started writing children's books and things like that. How come we don't see that this is the key? Education is everything, but you have to have proper education. You can't have this new math and all this stuff to confuse the kids that the teachers can't work. And we can't keep passing kids on to the next level in education when they haven't learned the first level. Okay? If he doesn't know addition, if he doesn't know subtraction, don't give him algebra. He won't know that. He'll just get further behind. Make sure you clear up what he doesn't understand in the basics of mathematics before you give him more stringent courses and classes in mathematics. These things are simple, but like they say, common sense is not necessarily all that common.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. So I want to also talk about like the people who don't know much about, like for me, I happen to just do door-to-door sales, right? I learned how to, so I was very literate coming out of school. I could have went anywhere. I dropped out of college just because I didn't like it just like, You partying, going to a party school, spending 50, 60K a year of my parents' money. I didn't think that was cool. So I wound up like going door to door, doing door to door sales. And at that point in time, I really learned how to be an entrepreneur. From your time up until this time, are you delineating the factor that this education system right now doesn't match this current standard? Because as an example, I think in Crenshaw, they actually have a technical district now where kids are learning how to do AI. They're learning coding. They're learning a lot of things. And even at my previous, I used to run Crenshaw Motors Ford as a general sales manager, just so you know, like back in the day before I started doing finance. But right there is now an academy. And I believe they're starting to train on things like that. Is that like a glimpse of hope because the charter schools are starting to do that now? Or what's your viewpoint on that?
Well, there's a glimpse of hope, but this is the problem. The United States has dropped in the ratings of kids who are being properly educated worldwide. California is at the bottom of the United States list. So the thing is that, yeah, I got a 10-year-old grandbaby who can code computers and do all of that stuff. And the kids seem to be able to learn the new technology, but a lot of them still don't know the basics of English, don't know the basics of mathematics, can't point the United States out on the map, a global map of the world. So, we have to do a much better job of getting the basics in, because if you've ever done martial arts or you've done boxing, if you don't have the basics in, you're looking for a knockout. You can have all of the tricks of Bruce Lee and all that, but underneath there has to sit the fundamentals of the foundation of what you do. And then, because that's what saves you when you don't have time to think, and you don't have time to do the fancy. The foundation and the fundamentals that you do automatically is what saves you. This is what we must do. How come we're not teaching our young kids, look, you want to be an actor, so you have to know what all of these words mean so that you can do the proper tone or image that they want. So if they say sigh, you got to know what to do. If they say, he's looking perplexed, you got to know what that means. So we have to attach where the kid wants to go to the educational program that he has to do to get there.
Got it. Can you go a little bit more into detail of that, though? Is it like a disconnect between the educators themselves not knowing possibly like that there's a specific way to think through these things for the kids? And I'll give you an example myself. The late, great Mr. Burkoffer, he did his best to try to tell me, he was my guidance counselor coming out of high school. And he did his best. He's like, you can pretty much do whatever you want. But he was looking at, what do you call it? It's an aptitude test, and it just showed that all my scores were off the charts. Just like when I did the military tests, scores off the charts. And so a kid like me still slips through the cracks because I'm smart. I got accepted to Penn State, U of Penn. I went to Loyola College in Baltimore. I was accepted to Liberty University and like a few more schools, pretty much anywhere that I wanted to go. But I still didn't get that type of counseling at that time. Is it just because of a knowing problem of the system itself? Do you think it's malicious intent? Is it somewhere in between? Because also where I live at in California, now we're having entrepreneur schools where they specialize in this specific type of, whether it's a trade, whether it's woodworking or, learn how to be an electrician or tech skills. So are you seeing a shift there? Is it still leading a lagging indicator from what you're saying, and I'm seeing a leading indicator? Is there some because you know it more than I do?
Well, not necessarily, but the thing is that my skill is to be able to observe. I went just like you. I went to Pepperdine. I was there a couple of years. I did 3 years or so. I wasn't as gifted a student as you were, but I was there, but I ended up dropping out because I didn't like what I considered the racist undertone and things at the time. I came out and went to Pepperdine in 1973. So there was still a lot of issues and things that going on. I think that the enthusiasm behind educating children in the inner city is different than educating kids in other cities. Um, I think that when you send teachers down and they can work off their student debt because you worked in the inner city, that don't mean that you necessarily get the best teachers, because the best teachers go to the school who might pay them enough money to where they can pay off their own debt, or they might have their own different type of incentive. The thing is that the teaching must be universal, and I am not necessarily a proponent for if a person goes to school, get his degree, his doctorate, and things like that, that we're not looking at people who are being indoctrinated into systems that have already failed. And so now we look at all of these plants and they close down, and stores, and we look at all these people with doctorate degrees running different parts of our government, and we're failing miserably. Everybody dealing with the homeless got a doctorate degree, and we got more homeless now than we ever had before. And I know that mental health is psychiatry is part of that problem too. But what I'm saying is nobody has the management skill with their doctorate degree to fix anything. So if you can't fix it, I was on a program with a psychiatrist, and he told me, until I have a PhD, like a psychologist rather, until I have a PhD like him, then, I could come back and talk to him then. I said, well, I don't have a PhD. I got a PhD. I've been out here doing it, and you've been studying other people's assessments of something that they never observed personally. And then you want to act like that is superior to fixing people, which I have done in our communities. So, you have to also know where you stand, because they have fooled you with that stuff. And if you look, the systems are failing. And they're failing.
Yeah. I'm not saying that the systems are failing. Trust me, I'm just as a great observer as well. maybe not at your level, but what I'm saying specifically though, what's happening?
I'm a smart guy, man. I wasn't that smart coming out of school and stuff. I went to the school of hard knocks, so I learned a lot.
Hey, I've been almost twice in my life. I totally get it. So it's just like, and that was the thing about it, and it came from me being illiterate. Like I didn't know how to do sales, I didn't know how to do marketing, I didn't know how to communicate. Most importantly, because what do we do in the culture? Don't look at me straight in my eyes, right? And that was the first thing. And then I'm coming from Chester, PA. You don't talk to nobody in Chester. You better stay right where you are. If you're in Middletown, you stay Middletown. East side. You know the game. That's just the way that it is. So it was statistically impossible for me to get out of that environment, but I did. So what I did specifically though was I just had that one track mind where I didn't think about anything else except the next step. And that's where I was pretty much asking you, because for people in the inner city, like some of my cousins as an example, some of them have never left Compton, and you know that it's just that they don't. And now they calling parts of it, the South Bay, and it's just like, cool, I get it. But if you haven't even been out of your environment because you just think it's that dangerous, and plus when I was working at Crenshaw, down the street was the jungle, so you got the jungle down the street, you got Baldwin Hills on one side, you got Crenshaw High School on the other side. Come on, man. But we still were able to navigate this thing. How do we get people to navigate these systems breaking? Even if they're breaking, meaning you still have a unique ability and skill set. And that's what I want to do, is just take this brain and go, here, this is how it works. This is what I see. You follow me? And take this part and just run with it. You follow me? Because generationally, how much more can anybody take? Period. Because the whole system is crashing regardless. 2020 was a big wake-up call for people. It was just like, everybody sat down, regardless of whether you believe in COVID or not. They sat down, was like, I don't like the way my life is working. I don't like you. I don't, everybody just started having all these realizations. And here we are, 2024.
No, you're absolutely right about that. but the old saying is each one teach one. And, people like you and I have to be mentors for young men. See, one of the things they found out, there was a school, I don't know where it is located, but there was these kids, they were CD students. President Obama, they were all black kids, black boys, and President Obama won, and all of a sudden they were CB students. And just because the image that they saw, and for the first time, there was a realization that maybe one day you could be president of the United States. His politics, how people believed he was good, bad, and different. The purpose that he served was to be the image, to show the family values and how a family should look. And so that brought up the expectation of so many people. So there's a lot of ways we can get to the mountaintop. You might get there by helicopter. I might hike, but the key is to get to the mountaintop. So there might be different routes. Our children have to be exposed to those routes so that we can see which route. Stevie Wonder wouldn't have been a great basketball player. See? And I couldn't sing and play the piano like Stevie Wonder, but in our own lane, with the support for our own lane, we could do a lot of different things,
Yeah, got it. And let's talk about that, because that really, I'm interested in that part as well. The power of mentorship. What have you seen as far as like when you put your intention on that and you're constantly continually going out here, you're touching families and you're touching lives. How is that really impacting people on a personal, social, professional, intellectual, spiritual level? I mean, this is big stuff here.
Well, I can tell you an example. There was this young man who lived on my street in Compton. And my dogs were big dogs, and they would somehow get out. They wouldn't attack people, but they would get out. They scared the whole neighborhood. And him, as a young man, had the guts to get them dogs and bring them back in. And so every time he brought the dogs back in when they had gotten out, he came and told me, and I gave him some money. One day I realized that he had gotten smart and he's letting the dogs out and then bringing them back so he could get paid the money. So I was telling him, no, you're going to cut grass or something now because I know you're doing this. And he laughs and all that. He got shot 13 times, but he lived. And one night I'm going to get a burger at a Louis Burger in Compton, one over on Rosecrans. And all these kids are out there. And I thought he was dead. And but I'm not paying attention, and I look up, and all these kids out there, and I hear somebody say, "Hey, you, the tall man, come over here." I'm like, Lord have mercy, what I done all these gang kids? I walk up in there, and I see him. He's calling the shots, and he says, "I want every one of you to look at this man's face. And if you see him in trouble anywhere, you come to his rescue." Now, we think we don't have impact on these kids, but if you treat them right, if you show them respect, if you raise them almost like they're yours, it's a different. I'm the same parent who my kid and one of the other neighborhood kids be angry, and I put them on punishment, call the parents, say, he gonna eat dinner over here with us tonight because him and my son was doing X, Y, and Z, and they got in trouble, and I got them both on punishment. And especially the mothers would always say, "Okay, thank you." Hang up before you change your mind. See, but if we be mentors like that, those are the impact. That is why we had the results we did. We turned out, with the group home, we turned out supervisor, electricians, NFL football players, bodyguards, ministers, people contributing to society. Why? Because we showed those kids, we love you, but we gonna get in your stuff until you get your stuff together. And those kids showed so much respect and stuff for us, and they come looking for us, and they do that because we wasn't BSing them. We was giving it to them straight up, no chaser, treat them like we would treat our kids, handle them, show them love. But when they had difficult moments, nobody was in their corner like us. When mama died, nobody was in their corner like us. So they knew that. That's what mentorship is. It ain't bossing kids around. It's developing a partnership with those kids. And so that the kid learns to trust you, and you learn to trust what you telling the kid. And that's where it goes down.
I got it. Appreciate it. And from another viewpoint, are you also finding the same delineation between families, regardless of what color? If there's 6 figures and up, is it the same problem, or is it not? Or is it something completely different?
I find it different because parents with money tend to don't make the kids get their exchange in. You know, kids have to be able to contribute. When you bail them out of everything, you make them weak. The one thing about the inner city kid is usually, be it bullies or whatever it is, he has to work his way through the problem. You know, mom gotta work. There's no house person there unless they're on welfare or something like that. So he's constantly overcoming the problems of his life. Where the affluent kid, he basically gets bailed out of everything. You know, I mean, I remember hearing a more affluent kid, I won't even say what race, curse his parents. I almost had a heart attack. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't have done that in my household because your survival depends on what your parent told you. See, we were of a different color. See, I had a person challenge me and say, why is it that the Black community was so into whipping their kids? And I said, she asked me that at a program. And, you know, in front of people when I speak, I said, you don't know. I said, that came from the fact that children have a tendency to do things that can get them in trouble. When they got in trouble back before the 50s, they could actually be killed and lynched, a la Emmett Till and people like that. So when your parents told you something, a lot of times they had to whip you to where the white person was satisfied so that they wouldn't punish you. So you learn to listen to your parents' voice. You heard the tone, so you knew the urgency. There was a lot that went to that, but it was to save lives. That's why they say this is going to hurt me more than it hurt you, because I really don't want to do this to you, but I got to make sure you understand that I'm trying to save your life in the future. And so when I say something, you have to do it. So I'm whipping you for your survival. And so a lot of times people outside of the community, and even those in the community later on, didn't understand how that came about, you know, and what we were dealing with at the time.
All right. You've been keeping it a buck, and I really appreciate it. You know, this is seriously an amazing interview. All right, let's talk about the difference. Like, how does that tie into like human rights? If we're like suppressing that behavior in a specific culture, how does that really affect human rights? Is that something that even that culture should consider? Because I know the environment shifted, because I used to give it all the time. I still have the scars, like physical scars from it, right? So I know what that lifestyle is like. But now you got Gen Z, where they got tech and they cancel people. You got millennials who are right behind. I'm Generation X, so you've got millennials right behind us who they typically are a little bit more assertive, but they'll still be a little bit more soft and sensitive towards things. But then you got Gen Z who just don't care. They're a little bit more conservative, but they also have tech. I don't know if this is making sense, but they literally, what I'm seeing is what I call generational segmentation, where you have baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and I think now you have an alpha. So is that common thread of human rights, despite income and disparity, is that common thread of human rights still something that is being preserved, or is it being lost from a 100,000-foot view? Because I know you have a better view of that than most people.
Oh man, that's a very interesting question. If I'm perceiving it right, um, I think that human rights is human rights, and there's a basics to it. I think in the field that I'm in, at CCHR, it's the right to have informed consent. It's the right to not go through electroshock type therapies that fry your brain with 400 plus volts of electricity. It's the right to not be drugged, involuntarily put, incarcerated against your will. Those are the things that stay consistent. And those are the things that we fight for. You know, some people would say that the way we got whippings was a violation of human right. Well, the way that right was taken from our parents was not because somebody loved us. It was a setup. You know, they say if you could see a trap coming, it wouldn't be a trap. And so what they were doing is they were taking, and it was an attack on parenthood, to force it to where the parents could not discipline their children. And then the children would end up having to go at a certain point to mental health for treatment. So it was a setup. It wasn't because of the fact that they didn't want children. I agree that because there are some parents who overreact to things. Some parents, they're whipping the children because that's the way they got whipped, and you got all of those things that are not fair to the kids. You know, I disciplined my kids, but there has to be a balance to things. And you can't just whip them every time you do something wrong and all of that stuff, because you beat the life substance out of them. So, you know, but if mental health would have wanted to help us, they would have came with solutions and some type of grids that parents could use as a guideline and things like that. But to tell you and me, we can't discipline our child when law enforcement can discipline them, and they can use all the way up to deadly force. You know, a judge sitting in a courtroom can make a man be disciplined. You know, mental health can decide to electroshock him and drug him, but you, the parent, you don't have those rights. Well, so we have to determine what is fair. And with the electroshock, don't forget, what we call therapy here in the military, they call torture. So, you know, it's like, it's who's spinning the bottle and trying to make it land a certain way, you know, and that's what we're looking at. So the human rights thing should be based on certain rights and stuff, and people should have the right for housing and all of those type of things, and to be educated and to be able to make a living. All of these things are part of what makes a society whole and function correctly.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question because I love it. You're used to having people ask you questions. You're used to debating. You're used to all of this stuff. What is a question that you wish somebody would ask you that has not been asked yet?
My question would be, well, I wouldn't want them to ask it of me. I would want them to ask it to their Congress and their U.S. senators and stuff. Why can't we get an investigation into what these drugs and these treatments are doing to society, and that they prove the effectiveness of these things? Because right now, every single situation they're treating is getting worse. Suicide is at an all-time high, homeless population all-time high, veterans killing themselves at 20 a day, 1 a day on duty, all of these things. How come we got all this conversation about guns, which should be your right, but we're not talking about these psychiatric drugs? and these treatments that are leaving people basically incapable of taking care of themselves. I would have them ask their congressmen and their senators that,
Clear.
to ask me a question, just ask me, what can we do about it? And we can come up with solutions. Most of these things are easy to handle. I'll show you right quick. We can't handle the homeless situation, but all we have to do is break it into 3 categories. Let's take the working homeless. Those are the people that sleep in their cars and rent gym memberships, and so they can take a shower and use the restroom at 24-hour fitnesses and stuff. Let's take all of those people and give them housing. And then let's take the willing homeless, those who would work if you gave them a chance, those who are out there sweeping the streets and nobody asked them, and they live on those streets. Let's give them housing. And then let's put the rest in the proper programs for drug rehabilitation and education and things, so they can lift themselves out of the mud. But what we do in our society, we take the worst, who go in and tear up a building that's brand new and put feces on the wall. We put them in housing before we put the working homeless in housing, before we put the willing homeless in housing. And that's doing the system backwards. And we would look up, and most of the homeless would be off the street. Those people who got campers, we're taking their campers away from them, and that's their housing. How can we just set up a place where you can legally put your camper and set up your own little community? And this is what I was talking about when I said these people with doctorate degree being indoctrinated into a way of thinking that does not allow them to come up with the solutions to problems. And that's what we need to be able to do.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about what you said earlier, and there's a direct correlation between, well, at least that's what I'm seeing, between literacy and mental health. Do you think if we were just to focus in on connecting those dots a little bit more, what do you think would really happen? I mean,
you would have a functioning society, but then the pharmaceutical companies and all of the people who pimp the system and get paid off of these people, maybe would be out of jobs, so they'd have to find different careers, because the reason it stays in place because people making money on it. We had Proposition H and HH. One was city, one was county. Nobody knows what happened to that homeless money. Then we back out here again with Proposition 1, the governor's pushing and all that. See, the thing is, they will never let people like you and I truly sit there, because we have integrity. And so we're going to say, what happened to the billions? Because maybe we could find some land and put up 1,000 units or 2,000 units with that kind of money and house the working homeless and create jobs right within that community and set up stores where we can give these people the proper vegetables and greens and things, so that they're putting the right nutrients in their body. You remember, you might be a little young, but if you used to watch the old Westerns, a man would get out in the desert and dehydrate, and I mean, he wouldn't, he start needing water and stuff. He would start hallucinating. Well, that should tell us way back then that it just might be that you don't have the proper nutrients that can cause problems in the body. But we don't even do medical examinations of them to see if there's an underlying cause. Why? You can give a guy, let's say $2,000, you could check everything, blood work, hormone levels, all of this stuff. Isn't that a good investment when you plan on paying him the rest of his life to be able to uncover the things that might be the thyroid or anemia? All of these things mirror mental problems. How do we know if a person has a brain tumor, or if he's hallucinating. See, we don't know. See, but we'll give him the drug. There was a girl, 2 years old. This was her symptoms. She howled in the night like an animal. She pulled at her, scratched her face and yanked her ears and pulled her hair and fought people when they tried her, and she moaned all through the day and everything like this. And they said, so what would you do with a person like that? I said, take it to the doctor. They took it to the doctor and they found out that she had a severe ear infection and head lice. But the psychiatrist in the facility where this little girl was had gave her Prozac. Prozac wouldn't have cured an ear infection in 200 years. But, so why couldn't we do that? In South Africa, they told me that they're labeling the kids with attention deficit disorder, and the only thing wrong with the kid is that they're hungry and haven't had enough sleep. So you would give a kid a pill before you give them a sandwich. See, this is what's wrong with it, and nobody can figure this out. Nobody's looking deep enough. That's why the PhD is important. See, they tell you that the homeless don't want to live in the housing. That's a clear sign that they're mentally ill. No, but if they got out on the street like me and asked the people, would you go to a drug rehab if I could get you in one? You know what they say? If my boyfriend can go with me, if my girlfriend can go with me, what? They don't want to separate from their partner. And most of these programs put the men in one place and the women, and they would rather, because all they got is each other, no matter how dysfunctional it is. All they got is each other. So they won't go to the programs if the other one can't go with them. But where's the PhDs in figuring this out? You just got to get into the trenches.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about it, though. I mean, you're saying something that's striking definitely a chord. Who's the real audience, though? Before you answer that, here's what I mean by that. So, like me, for example, I've been out there. Even during the pandemic, I was out there helping small businesses out there in South Central, period. And they call it South LA now. So there's a learned helplessness that I've seen that still hasn't changed even since I left the inner city a long time ago. But then when I hear you speak directly, which is cool, it's like the other side of the people who are listening to this, how are they responding? Are they going like, man, is that too unbelievable? Or does that really happen? I know you see it because this is what you eat, live, breathe, and sleep and think. But for the person who's just now being introduced to this, like, what would be a real good entry point for them to just start seeing what you see?
Well, the first thing they have to do is get involved. See, what we do in America right now, what we do in the Black community, we talk about it. We talk about it. We talk about it. And talking about it allows us to stay as spectators. It's the ones that get in and start doing the action. The ones that's willing to get their hands dirty. Most people don't want to do that. So you have the people who will come to the meeting and complain. They'll say to me, and what is the NAACP doing and stuff? Brother, you looking at the NAACP. I'm the president of Inglewood. How come you're not joining me in this fight? You want these things changed, but you don't want to even pay a membership, but you want me to go out here and spend my hours of life fighting for your cause that you're not willing to do. People will say, oh, every athlete and movie star that has made it to contribute to the community. Why would I train? And I used to be a basketball player. I didn't make the pros. I got invited but to the Laker camp. But why should I work all of those hours, put in all that training, do all that sacrificing to go give money to people who won't even walk around the corner and vote? See, it's like a man might knock you down, It's your fault if you stay down. See, if I get hit with a karate kick and go down, he had skill enough to knock me down, but how come I don't get up? And if I sit there every time somebody walk by and say, he knocked me down, he knocked me down, he knocked me down, at some point you say, what's wrong with you? How come you don't get up? And if we say we kings and queens and we come from that lineage and heritage and all of that stuff, then we're champions. And the ground ain't a place for a champion. Champions get up. Ali, great as he was, got knocked down. Joe Louis, as great as he was, got knocked down. Sugar Ray Leonard got knocked down. They got up. And that's what we have. The days of singing "We Shall Overcome" are done. We have to come over. And that's what where we sit now. Yeah, we shall overcome. No, it's time to come over. And that's what we have, the mindset we have to have to win. Otherwise, we will keep being suckers for the gang and for the people who bring in the gangster rap and all of that stuff that put our kids in jail and prison, and we start calling that our culture. Whose mind are we taking on? So I think the day has to come when we take responsibility, get involved in the community, be able to take the lead as we need, to be able to step back as we need, and let other people lead sometimes. We always can't be the star of the show. Sometimes episodes go around other people too. And so, but that's what the spirit of cooperation is. And that's what we have to be. And just like me and you met, and now we're doing this show because we collaborated, boom, I'll support this brother, I'll support this brother, and here we go. That's the mentality you got to have. I didn't know you before last week. But look how fast, because you wanted to do something and I wanted to do something. Look how fast we got it together. That's the way everybody got to start doing.
I got goosebumps when you said that. That's one of the things that and I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because another thing about me that you don't know is that, like, back in 2021, 2022, I had to repivot everything that I was doing because I'm an advertiser and a marketer. Well, not really. That's what they call it out here. In the government, it was called something else. So I started something a while back on the streets just for that reason. It was called the Angelino Project. And the reasons why I called it that, because I was like, how cool would it be to really change the whole vibration of a city? Even LA was founded by St. Francis on August 2nd. That's my birthday. So, well, my thing is, how do we change the culture to a positive vibe? Like, because that was the whole thing. Because I was actually in the studio down in San Diego, and I was like, how cool would it be if we could legit change the vibe of a city with education and development? The people who really want to do it, the people who really want to put in the work, something that's just, just enough for them to just, to your point, get their hands dirty, and then they'll see how much is really wanted and needed to get things fixed, if that makes sense.
Well, it does. But let me tell you what's killing us more. There's things, when we let the criminal element run society and set the rules, you have pretty much failed. We have no snitching rules. But who are the victims of those crimes? See, I tell people, I've said in meetings, at ceasefire meetings and different type of meetings, and I tell them all the time, I don't snitch on nobody. I tell on people. If you commit a rape in my community, you rob an older person, you shoot an innocent person, don't worry who don't. I'm telling you. Well, brother, they'll come after you. Well, that's at their own risk. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's on them. But this is why it's important that the church be powerful, and this is why the men have to be powerful. When I was in the sheriff department, a mother was 8 months pregnant, 2 guys that lived down the street from her was snatching her purse and she was holding on to the purse. And one of them took a little knife and started nicking at the stomach where the baby was to make her turn loose the purse. And then when I get there taking the call, the husband, boyfriend rather, he says, "Officer, I need you to do me a favor. You Black, you from this community, you this, that, that. I need you to do me a favor." I said, "What is that?" He said, "Tell her how much trouble she could be getting us in, snitching on these gang members and how they might all come after me and everything and come after her. Tell the truth on that." I said, "Brother, do you really want the truth?" He said, "Yeah. If this was my wife, the police would be at their door. They wouldn't be down here because they coming in because I kicked in the door and we got issues going down, right? And people who know me know I have a track record." I didn't care what gang you was in. See, but the thing is that we don't have the men that will be men and take care of their families. I was raised by a man like that, so I'm like that, and my kids are like that, boys are like that, because that's the way we were. I didn't even know you had other options. When my sister was getting ready to get in the fight, I had to go fight even if he was a boy. You know, I didn't know it was any other way. See, now we didn't got where we all careful. We all, the gangs and stuff. Brother, it's time that the men become men and the ministers become men of God and the church take its rightful role, and we have to all come back, and we can't afford to be spectators. We got to be engaged and make a difference with our actions and not with our mouths.
So what's the first step?
The first step is and we're actually taking that first step, and I'll make sure you're part of that meeting. We're looking at setting up a nationwide leadership Zoom call, and it's going to last a couple of days. It's only going to be 2 to 4 hours a day for 2 or 3 days. We're not doing all day blocks, but we will be identifying the people who got something to bring to the table and we will have people sit in before the meeting, the issues, and then we will cut those issues down, consolidate some of the issues, things like that. So we know what our agenda is. Well, with all our brilliant minds and educated people, why don't we have an agenda? I'll tell you why. Because when I put one together before, just in the Los Angeles area, we spent more time arguing over the issues than we could solving anything. We have people, the reason the Black community is the way it is because men don't treat women right. We had, all of these things. Education wasn't even on the table. Psychiatric treatment was only on the table because I brought it to the table. It's like, so what we have to do is quit knowing it all. And let's learn and listen. And then see where you can fit in. If you call the round table, I say, brother, I'll come in. Now, I got a background in law enforcement. I got our own group homes for boys. I got a lot of different, but I say, I'll come in with the mental health piece. You see? Now, let somebody else do the police piece. And let somebody else, it ain't got to be my show, but we all try to have it as our show. And that is because we have been so pushed down that those are the only time people hear us. So we spend more time talking than we do creating solutions. And that's the way that has to be. That's first step.
Right. So what happens next?
Well, once we start putting it together, the clergy and all of the community leaders have to come in and start forcing our politicians to start speaking on our behalf. Because the only thing that will change anything is legislature. See, the NAACP right now, if you notice, they don't seem to be marching and all that, but just in pockets and stuff, because they're actually behind the scene working on legislation. In 2004, the Citizens Commission on Human Rights and the NAACP was able to partner. And we were able to get the Child Safety Medication Act passed. And that said that parents could not be forced to put their kids on drugs as a condition for being in school. That was signed into federal law by the younger George Bush. So, and it was the NAACP who pushed that, because I was an NAACP member. I went to the state of California, who board member Alice Huffman pushed it to Julian Dixon and Kwame Nkrumah, and then they took it and they pushed it to the Democrats, and then we were able to get bipartisan participation and make that law come in. This is the way for the future. Nobody cares if you're marching. They only care if you burn it. That's because of the insurance companies and the buildings, and then people don't want to invest in the community because it's dangerous. But nobody really cares if you march. You know, it's what are you willing to do to change something? Will you vote? And those are the things that change something. So, you know, and once we learn how to vote and quit just voting because, oh, this is my side and that's their side. No, we have, who is brokering the best deal for our community? It's not about a Republican, Democrat, like they got different type of blood. But we have to be willing to say, if an independent or a Republican is bringing the best deal, then why wouldn't we take that best deal? Because we take it at dealerships. We take it when we be buying houses. How come when something is to be voted on, then we just jump to one side of the room and don't look at the whole deal based on what media tell us? Me personally, I don't like either side. But the thing is that you got to go somewhere. So who can I work with? That's who I like.
Wow. Yeah, this has been.
I don't like either side because of what they say about each other. I don't know the people personally. So what Trump say about Lil Mario and all of that stuff is what gives me the opinion of Lil Mario. It's what Tulsi Gabbard says about Kamala Harris that tells me who she is. It's what they saying about each other when I'm listening, who tell me who they are.
There's that saying, when people tell you who they are, you believe them.
I won't believe
them. Yeah, man. I can tell you this much though. This is probably one of the more enlightening conversations I've had, like, in probably 5 or 6 years, if not longer. Just because, like, when I left the media field, I just turned it off. Like, I almost got, I was out in the desert, almost got killed. I was just like, I'm done. I unsubscribed from watching any type of news and TV. And as soon as I turned it back on, back in like November of 2020, it's the same stuff. But the problem is that it's still stirring up our society in a way where, like, I see an immediate answer. Me and you have not talked about this. I see a real immediate answer. Here's the immediate answer. Because I've been trained in broadcasting, in journalism. It only makes sense to me to show people broadcasting and journalism skills, because that's part of how the process of that communication works. And if it's causing a negative effect, it can also cause a positive effect. Like even as in the Marines, like I did over 300 editorial stories, and I said I am not going to do any if it's blood it draws kind of stuff, because it just craps you out. One of my other friends, her name is Brandy, same thing, top secret cleared. So yeah, if it bleeds, it leads kind of stuff. It just fuels the machine, man. Even with my clients, I'm just like, go out there and scream at that car. It ain't gonna move, but if you got the remote control, you can push the buttons. That's what I see as like an immediate fix. Your thoughts on that? Or am I just psycho? Maybe I need to just throw it away.
I actually think that you're right about that. I mean, there's no need for me to elaborate. You're right on that. You got the correct assessment. I'd go with you.
Well, that's what I want to teach, because I know how to do it. Each one teach one.
Each one teach one.
That's what my whole project is about, sir. At the Angelino Project, that's exactly what it's about. Because I'm like, look, I can show people like this stuff is working to this day. Because we had to do that kind of homework. It was like, hey, this is it. When you leave out there these doors, look for these parts of the elements of the news story. Tell me what you saw, and that's how we got graded. I mean, and I became an award-winning like journalist for it. I mean, to me, I didn't believe in awards at that time, but when I saw the magnitude of the award that I got, just honored that energy back in 2020. I was just like, oh, because I had no reality on it. I was just moving. You know, I'm a doer. I'm a verb. Like that's what I do. I'm continually out here. And one of the things that you said that just struck me was just like, that's all we need is that communications literacy at that level, you know, because I was even held to super high ethical standards in order to learn that stuff. Even when I wanted to get into the field professionally back in '99 when I got out, I had to take a test in just for ethical standards. So, I mean, that's what I see. I mean, so that's my contribution to it.
Well, you know, in the greater overall things, you have a podcast that you do, and you know, people like me, you know, you got to have them on frequently and break it down into subjects. How is it that they're destroying religion? How is it that they're undermining education? And what is it? What is the benefit for them drugging children or electroshocking children from 0 to 5 years of age? There's a lot of things that we can talk about and go into. And, you know, sometimes God uses us in different ways, and he's using you as a platform so truth can get out into the community. And there's not many things more powerful than that. You know, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free or make you free, depending on which interpretation. But whatever it is, you get to go free if you get the truth. And so that's what we need to focus on, and that's what will bring about part of the salvation that we're looking so hard for.
Yeah, definitely couldn't agree with you more. Well, yeah, I mean that's just where I'm at, because to me it's just like, when you see this can happen, so do this. When you see that means this. So here is it, fix that. What's next? You know, like, because that's what I was paid to do, is just like fix problems and handle things like, and when you said these things as far as like people just having the incorrect assessment, next thing you know they're on drugs, and just like, yeah, that's happened to me. Even from the VA viewpoint, it was just like I walked in, hey, here's these drugs, and oh, by the way, if you take this one specifically, you might not be able to get off of it. It's just like, what? Wow.
Well, you know, and another thing that we have to see happen that help the Black. See, one of the things in the Black community, we are actually being taught victimism, and it's not that the situations aren't true, but it's all in the handling of it. That's why I say, you know, we have to be able to you know, say, wait a minute, I have to get up. Okay, they're not hiring me. How do I get in a program to teach me how to drive trucks, to teach me how to do certain things? What can I do to change my fate? You know, but you can't do that if you're not looking for the way out and you're waiting for somebody to come and deliver you. I was in a conversation with a brother the other day, and he was talking about, well, that's why we all need to go back to Africa. I said, brother, with all due respect, and I've been to South Africa in different places, and if I just retired and went there, I could live good. But the thing was, nobody sent one canoe to get us. So, you know, all of this going back to the root stuff, it all sounds good. But me, I know how to work with this here. I don't know how to work with that over there. Let me help create the society that I want over there, over here. Because many of us are being born and dying here and never get out the United States. And you mentioned something earlier today. When I owned my group homes, we found that 90% of the kids had never been to the airport.
That part right there.
You see, so let's even learn where we are before we start talking about where we're going, you know?
Yeah, it's that distance between you actually realizing where you're at, and then the other part of that distance that takes the traction to get there. That's what I see.
Yep.
I love it. You're amazing. I honor you. I'm hugging your brain right now. Thank you for everything.
Well,
And
I want to just thank you for having me on the show. You are an excellent interviewer, and you ask the right questions. And I was just honored to be here and able to get in here. You know, you didn't rush the time. We've been on here for a while now. And, you know, that's how we get to the truth. And so you continue to be the amazing person you are and do the things that you do. So people like me have a place to come and give my information.
thank you so much. That really means the world to me. And I'll drop the links down on how people can reach you. And is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap it up?
I just want to say that if you live in the LA area or anywhere within an hour striking distance of Sunset Boulevard and Highland, come down to 6616 Sunset Boulevard and see Psychiatry and Industry of Death Museum. It's a 500-year history of psychiatry from its inception all the way through to the modern day educational system. And so we can put truth on the line and know where a lot of the things that we thought came from one place, how it came from a different place, and what has been really thought. And so we revealed this here, and hundreds of thousands of people have come through this museum. And since we've been doing this, when I came, got involved in CCHR, really got involved, I thought there was like, oh, what was it? 8 million kids on psychiatric drugs. And now it's 6.1 or something. So the message is going out. We are making a difference. And if, you know, if anybody wants to contact me, just have them go to the email fshawjr@yahoo.com, fshawjr@yahoo.com, and put in the name of this show, Mind's Eye, put that in the subject line, or they can put Fred Smith in the subject line, and I'll know that it's your audience, and I'll get back to them. CCHRINT.org. That's the website. And we have a drug database where if you are any drug, you can put it in our database and it will give you what the side effects of the drug is, not the manufactured side effect that they put on the website, which is not always true. You can learn about electroshock there, and you can tour our museum in 3D from the beginning to the end on that website. Not as good as being in person, but you can get a great idea of what it is. And with that, thank you, my brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you. And that's it for the Mind's Eye podcast. Appreciate you guys. Check us out. And again, as we continue to build this, it takes teamwork to make the dream work on all levels. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And please stand by, Fred.